Hi, everybody. I'm here with Jeremy Lyons again, and we are talking recruiter enablement and RecOps in 2024. What's likely to come up? Jeremy is like a connector and leader in the RecOps space. So, Jeremy, just give us, if anybody's not seen you on this channel or anywhere else before, give us a quick intro to you, to RecOps Collective, to what you do for a living, all that sort of stuff.
Sure, definitely. And it still feels awkward when people tell me I'm a leader in this space. I just give ideas and share it, but I think the connector thing is pretty spot on. So a little background on me. I've been in the RecOps space now for about 6+ years. Started a company called RecOps Collective with the goal of kind of having a business side where we could help companies do the things that they need to do on their RecOps, fine tune their tooling, help with their documentation, all those fun RecOps behind the scenes sorts of things. Or if we can't do it, kind of be a RecOps Yelp, so pass people along. And then on the other side, we have articles, we have things that are written by RecOps people for RecOps people, so you can kind of skip out on the recipe reading of, this is how somebody discovered this. I call that our Players Tribune side, kind of how athletes have formed this news organization where they write about what it means to be in it, not the reporters on the other side.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I was thinking, by the way, if you were to do a conference, you would need to call it RecOps Con.
Ooh. Okay, so not to get people too excited, but we are in the works. I'm talking with a number of RecOps people about making that a reality. I will put RecOps Con as a top contender for the name.
Sounds like Special Ops Con.
It's funny. It's if you lean more RecOps, RecOps Con works. There are teams that have that do lean more on the TA Ops titling, and when I've seen that, I've kind of done some special, or I've played around with that. It's like tactical acquisition and operations as a titling for that, just to sort of make it seem a little bit more covert.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly trying to make it seem like TA Ops and RecOps aren't that covert thing hiding behind the scenes where you only hear about us when there's like a great failure and not all the great successes.
Oh, there's so much happening in this area. I mean, I remember a few years ago, your RecOps person was really looked after the ATS, is what they did. So, like, don't just bring us up to date, but tell us about like what's all hot. What's 2024 got in store, do you think? What are the trends? What should we expect?
Yeah, so it's 2024 is a really interesting year, and I think we've started to see more and more people talking about what is RecOps going to look like in 2024, in terms of how things have been growing with AI. And I know that there have been a couple of ATSs. I mean, Alan Bailey at Smart Recruiters sticks out to me. She called 2024 the year of RecOps, and I'm inclined to believe her because we're starting to see more and more tool consolidation. And with that tool consolidation, you're going to need people who really understand what you're using inside and out. But now it's not about sort of keeping all of the integrations going. It's about maximizing what you have. And I think it's kind of indicative of what the market has been usually in the past, where when you had all this money in this hot market, you had people going for specialists. Your RecOps person might lead a team, but that team might be your data person, a programs person, maybe managing a coordination team. So you had them kind of doing all these things. Now it's do more with less. And we're seeing that reflected in the tools as well, that it's do more with less. So I think what we're going to start to see is that exact reflection, and it's going to be kind of a really interesting, cool thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear. I hadn't heard Alan Bailey say that about 2024, but I'm not surprised because she's been talking about this recruiterless future, which is ahead of us, and kind of the stepping stone towards that is that RecOps takes over more and more of the heavy lifting and replaces it with simple stuff. Doing more with less. That's a concept I like the sound of. Give us a bit more about what you mean on that.
Yeah, so I think one of the, I mean, to kind of add on to it, I know that Matthias is also talking about skill-based hiring, and I think that's also going to change the landscape from what we've done over what's been in the past. Kind of getting into the doing more with less. I kind of and I did a post about this, which is one. I think people think that in order to be more sophisticated, you have to get more complicated to do that. And that's actually not the case. I think it's when you start cutting back and making things more simple, it's demonstrating kind of an era of really tactical thinking. And when you think about what your recruiting operations team is there for, it's to reduce cost and increase your recruiting team's efficiency. And so recruiting ops teams are there to sort of say, well, yes, we know you want to track some metric that's really hot and trendy right now, but is that really a metric that is something that's going to get us to where we need to be as a team, where we are considered revenue generating, all of those things? And I think that doing more with less sometimes gets you to think like, okay, what is the Occam's razor solution to this problem? What is the simplest way for us to get from point A to point B that's a straight line? Whereas maybe in the past we may have been in sort of it's curving, it's, you know, we're zigzagging through all the tools and trying to make sure that they're aligned somewhere else outside. And I think that, you know, tools like Poetry HR, you know, that are bringing all of the enablement pieces together where you can actually go and track stuff. That's doing more with less, because previously in the past, you might have a Confluence page, a Notions page, a thing like that, and you don't know who's where or what they've done. You don't know if you've made updates and people are actually tracking them. So there are things that are starting to happen now in the market that weren't happening before that are now making things easier, because that's just what needs to happen with a smaller team.
I can give you an example of that actually. And you're right. Like one of the things that we're trying to solve at Poetry is recruiters are overwhelmed with the number of different systems they've got to use, and with every new system they've got to use, they've got to learn how to use it. And so what we've been very careful about is we've got 28 solutions within Poetry, but they nearly all follow the same format for how to use it. So they're all very straightforward. Just before we came on this call, I was showing it to a pharmaceutical company, and I showed them how the Boolean builder worked, and they just went, "Wow, that's really great." I mean, it was honestly about the most simple thing that we've put together within that, and it is a very simple Boolean builder. But because it's so simple, they were like, "That's really." I mean, it's like filled in 3 fields, click 2 buttons, and there it is. There's your Google page with all of the candidates who are likely to be relevant. So simplifying is something that it helps recruiters to go faster.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's the thing. And I said this in a conversation recently, which is, I mean, people don't, when you watch a sport and people always say, well, that was a boneheaded move, why did the person do that? I think especially in sports like rugby or American football, you see it where it's like, well, what was he doing? Well, I mean, the point in that is that the whole week leading up, you are training yourself to do one thing. You're training yourself on your assignment. And what happens sometimes is you don't want to actually think. You want to be in react and do mode. And I think the problem when we have a lot of different tools and a lot of different spaces and a lot of jumping from place to place, and this is sort of why tools like Ashby have been successful, where it's like, no, you don't need to go and leave to go to your sourcing tool. You don't need to go and leave to go to your ATS or anything like that. It's all in one place. Is you're getting people into out of a thinking and being paralyzed by that thought and just being like, do the thing that you do and you do best and focus on that and going out and do that thing, as opposed to like, okay, well, we need you to go and mark something down in this sheet and then go run over here and look at your Boolean search builder, or pop in and out of all of these things. It's not needed and necessary.
I suppose actually, you bring up another good example. I've never used it, but as I understand, it's like lots of different things that you would get from multiple different technologies all in the one place.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it's really powerful. I mean, you're seeing it, like Rippling just built an ATS to capitalize on their HRIS. Gem has just built an ATS to capitalize on their sourcing and their analytics. Paradox, yeah, Dover. I mean, everybody is trying to build something that's going to make it so that you're going to keep everybody in one place and it's going to stay as sticky as possible. And I think that that's sort of why in 2024, your RecOps team, really has to have kind of something of an education, not only in teaching people in different learning styles, but also teaching people like, okay, this is going to be how we're going to be proactive in getting ahead of this and going from there.
Simple is sticky, isn't it? And that's why people really love things like Monday.com. Just really straightforward. Let's talk about recruiter enablement. Like, what do you see from all the companies that you talk to? What do you see happening in this area? I think that I'm just going to add one thing before I finish and let you actually answer the question. But I think that there is almost a recruiterless future, but it's quite a long way off. I think that there's a lot of areas of recruitment where you don't really need humans doing interviewing and things like that. You just don't. In executive levels different. At the early careers level, you need a lot of design thinking and a lot of marketing orientation and stuff like that. But there's a lot of areas where I can see a recruiterless future. However, in the medium term, I think that augmenting recruiters is a no-brainer, really. But yeah, what do you think about this area?
Yeah, so it's funny, actually. I was thinking about this last night, just kind of in reflecting on some of the interview processes that I've been a part of, or processes that I've designed in the past. Because I mean, going back and thinking about what you've done in the past is also really, really important too. I think that recruiting follows a 3-act structure, which is kind of iconic of television and movies. And the problem with that is that there are a lot of MacGuffins or Chekhov's gun, where you're introducing something at the very beginning, and then you never come back to revisit it. And whether that's in your job description, or that's in something that somebody is saying in the interview, or that's something at the very, very end. And I'm with you in the sense that I see a future that could not have recruiters in it. And I see that because about 5 years ago, or I was in one of my very first coordinator jobs, and I looked at the spend of us flying candidates into a location for an interview, and I went, why are we spending this much money to do this when you can get them at home? We have video conferencing. People can do it from home. They've slept in their bed. They've been with their families. And we don't have to worry about what happens if this plane goes down. What happens if this person gets sick? We don't have to worry about any of that. And at the time, the company said, nope, we will fly somebody in for a handshake and we'll fly them back out. And that just seemed very wasteful spending to me. Now everybody's like, look, let's get them on a video. We don't need to fly them anywhere. But yeah, it's the same sort of concept with a recruiterless future. Do I see that it is possible if people are going to change certain things? Yes. But one of the things that and this was a really interesting call, Carrie at Searchlight was talking about Tracy, their new AI, and how it's there to help with the selection process of candidates. And one of the things that stood out to me within that is that most of these models that are using AI to train are training it on your data and are training it with what's been viewed in the past and using that to kind of predict the future. And I think what we have seen, or what we know about the data, is that not all of that data that you have is good data. So if you're in a company that's like, we want to get rid of all of our recruiters and we want to bring in AI, well, you have to not just say recruiting is a recruiter issue. It's, well, our hiring managers have to write better job descriptions. Maybe that's the problem. Our hiring managers need to make better selections of candidates. That's a problem. You know, it's, you have to look at, be so far beyond the walls of recruiting to get to a recruiterless future that it can't just be somebody comes in and says, look, I've introduced this AI. It's going to sit over your ATS and it's going to make predictions about who the best candidates are. I'm not saying that about Tracy. I'm just saying in general. And so with that kind of being the mindset, you have to realize that recruiting is a team sport. You have to incorporate ideas that are happening outside of recruiting in order to get it to even be possibly close to a recruiterless future. And then at the end of the day, you also have to remember, people are people. People want to be the best candidate experiences that you read about. Is like, this recruiter went above and beyond and walked me down the aisle. They didn't just sort of open the doors and say, okay, you're getting married, now go. They really physically walked you down. They gave you questions in ahead of, so you knew what you were going to be asked. So you knew how to prepare, you knew how to bring your best self. And those are the experiences we hear about that are fantastic. We don't hear a lot about the experiences where people are like, yeah, well, you know, they opened the door, I had a good interview, and then I got the job. Something had to happen there.
That's right. Jeremy, we are doing a series, and so I will see you in a week. Let's leave it there. We've got 3 more topics to have a look at, but this has been really useful. I appreciate your input. I agree with everything you've just said. It's difficult for me to do it, so because you know it all better than I do. So I look forward to seeing you in a week's time.
Look forward to seeing you in a week, Adam.